That's good. Oh, this is great now.
So I do have Santa on my tie, just so people know.
No bow tie from Rob today.
No
No, he's in
contest
his-
compared to what you've got in here. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 9:07. We're a little late due to the snowstorm. I'm going to verbally confirm that we have quorum. We are missing one member. We've got 4 members online, and the rest are here in the chamber. We also have the CAO, Deputy Clerk, Director of Development Services, Environmental Sustainability, and other members of staff with us. We had a public, I want to advise that we had public input on the agenda and was invited through the township email as normal. Today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. And by participating in the open meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. We do have a supplementary agenda. And we are going to change with consent of committee, I'm going to change the agenda a little bit and bring item number 14A and have it, which is the Christie case. We're going to bring that up and do it right after the delegations, which is 5A. So we will bring those together and do them first. Committee, are we all right with that? Everybody okay with that? Thank you very much. Do any of committee members have pecuniary interests? And just so that the public knows, we pre-populate the motions with random movers and seconders to expedite the meeting. It does not mean, it's just to expedite how we do the meeting. All right, so let's get on with the first item, and we have a report.
Oh, you were going to do the delegate.
No, we're doing Tatham Engineering first.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we will follow that, and then the delegation. So Tatham Engineering is presenting our regional climate change mitigation plan, and I presume that's being done online. And we're bringing them in. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Elham Guruhi, and I'm here to present the climate change mitigation plan. But before I do that, I just received a message from my laptop, like the supplier, that they're going to restart it at 9:19. So is there a chance that we can postpone it so I can restart my laptop, because I don't want to my computer shut down at the middle of the presentation.
All right, so you're not the only one with computer problems this morning. We will then go on and do the delegations then, and we'll come back to you if that's fine. So you'll have to keep an eye on us till we finished our delegations.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So do we have the delegations online? Let me just see which one we want for. So there are Thomas Blackdar, Bruce Blackdar, and Kim Baker, I think. Blackadar, I guess is the name. Who is, I guess, is Thomas there first? Bring them in.
So he's in, he just needs to turn his camera.
If you could, Mr. Blackadar, if you could turn your camera on. Good.
Hi.
Good morning. Let me just start with a little bit of guidance for all the delegates today. We have received any of your emails we've received, and committee has read them all. I'd like you to keep your delegation to, let's stick to the facts, the history, and the planning issues. We don't want any discussions about personal character and behavior. So if you could keep it to that, you're welcome. If you start with your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Thomas Blackadar. I'm joining remotely from my residence in room 2601, number 5, lane 333, Shimenilu Road in Shanghai, China. And thank you very much for putting me first because it's almost midnight here.
Is that your home address?
That is my home address.
Thank
my
you.
Muskoka home is at Silver Island 18M25, directly across from Duck Island. So this
Thank
is
you.
relative to item 14 on the agenda. So this is now the third time that this proposal has been brought forward almost unchanged. And I and many neighbors have attended and spoken at 2 previous meetings, August 2014, June 2024. I think we've made very clear how dangerous and inappropriate it would be to allow a zoning change and variance for major new development on an island that's essentially a large rock. We made clear that rather than being safer than on the south side, any boathouse on the north side of Duck Island would present a major environmental and safety issue in a narrow channel where boats frequently pass at excess of 120 kilometers an hour. I mean, literally, we've clocked that. Yet the application's back with only a few technical tweaks that end up pushing the proposed boathouse even further into that channel. I'm sorry to say that the applicant's response memo completely misrepresents the facts of the case. It implies that the township accepted the use by issuing building permits in 2011 and a small compromise of an added dock in 2014. On the contrary, the council defeated the proposal in 2014 over grave concerns about its appropriateness and legality. Quoting from the 2014 minutes, this minor amendment will defeat the proposal to rezone the property or increase lot coverage, but permit a 48 by 12 dock in an OS4 zone, and that was carried. The applicant is also hoping that you will forget the debate that happened at the June meeting, where the committee deferred the motion with a strong suggestion that the application should only be resubmitted for consideration if the applicant were willing to remove one of the existing major structures. We don't even agree with that, but here we are again debating essentially the same application for a third large structure on an extremely small island. Finally, I have to contest the statement that happened at the June meeting and again in the application that the legal question was settled by the previous township actions. This might have been true if the 2011 building permits had been properly issued, but the presumption of continued occupancy was based only on an obviously false affidavit from a former lawyer who was publicly known at the time for having been disbarred for unethical actions regarding this very case. Also, a simple search of township records would have found internal legal opinions that the island appeared to be abandoned and no building permit should ever be issued. Since easy due diligence was not properly performed at the time, the township and its offers cannot be sure that they are protected from future liability. This was one of the major reasons the council defeated the proposal in 2014 and should again. I should make clear that we're asking the committee to reject the proposal in its entirety, both the proposed development and the zoning change. The OS4 zoning is there for a reason to protect current and future owners from the mistaken assumption that the legal issues are settled. Should the township accept a zoning change to WR3, it would be endorsing the applicant's dubious claims to full legal use. This would only deepen the township's potential liability in the case of an accident or environmental spill. So no, the application was not supported, but rather firmly rejected by the council 2014. No, the applicants did not agree to proceed just to avoid further conflict with their neighbors. They knowingly bought a
if we could stick to,
Okay.
some without making character judgments here, please.
Okay, I'm not trying to, I have no character judgments. It's just This was an OS4 zoned island with troubled history, and the council told that any future use must continue to comply with OS4 limitations with no further development beyond repairing existing structures and a small dock expansion. The small compromise might have been more than we should have offered, but in any case, it should have ended the discussion, future development. So we ask you to please protect the community, reject the application in its entirety, both the overdevelopment and the inappropriate zoning change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for sticking to your 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Let's go. Yeah, next one I think is Mr. Bruce Blackador. If you could turn your camera on. And Thomas, I think you can turn yours off now. Good morning.
Oh, yes. Now, can you hear me?
We can, and we can see you, so.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I'm Bruce Blackador. I'm Thomas's brother. I'm a longtime summer resident of Silver Island. It's just across the channel from Duck Island. And I've commented about this issue at previous meetings, and I've submitted written comments, so I'll be brief. And I also apologize if I'm not too articulate yet today, because it's 6 a.m. out west here. I'm in Reno, Nevada. So this proposed new boathouse is before you today for the third time. And it's now claimed that the boathouse was actually approved at the first meeting in 2014. This claim is absolutely false. The council denied the proposal then, along with the request to change the zoning of the island. The only things approved then were renovation of the historical buildings and construction of a dock on the south side where there was one historically. To quote the minutes of the August 2014 meeting, the council, quote, does not deem it advisable to rezone the subject property from open space, OS4, or increase the maximum permitted lot coverage. Nothing has changed since then to warrant overturning the 2014 decision, which I should point out was already a compromise. The only thing that has happened since then is that the regulations have gotten stricter. We strongly oppose rezoning the island. It does not come close to meeting the minimum requirements for residential zoning. It's always been zoned open space. Well, I say always, I mean always since zoning began here. The historical buildings probably predate the beginning of zoning. In 2014, the council reaffirmed that this is the correct zoning, and it's still the correct one. One argument made for rezoning, as Tom said, is the claim that the island has been continuously inhabited, which is demonstrably false. This claim seems to be based on a fraudulent affidavit by the previous owner. There was a 1997 staff investigation which stated that the island was uninhabited and uninhabitable. No determination of continuous habitation was made in the decision of 2014, and we continue to vigorously dispute the claim. And according to the affidavit of Mr. Campbell, who's an eminent Ontario lawyer, council members and staff could potentially face personal liability for damages as a result of construction approved.
I'm not sure that this is particularly relevant to the case here. I want to deal with some facts and planning, please.
All right. One potential big issue is boat collisions. And I hope everyone has had a chance to view the video clip I circulated of boats speeding right past the location of the proposed boathouse. It would be a catastrophic accident just waiting to happen if this boathouse is approved and built. The applicants have made no attempt to work with the committee or their neighbors or to address the serious concerns raised at the June meeting, but have brought essentially the same plan back again. In summary, this is a bad proposal all around, and there is no justification for approving it. To approve it now, you must decide that the 2014 decision was in error and must be overturned. I urge the committee to reaffirm the 2014 decision and finally put this whole issue to rest once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could you give us your home address, please? We
yes.
forgot to get it at the beginning.
3530 Southampton Drive. It's one word, Southampton Drive, Reno, Nevada, 89509 US.
Thank you very much. The next delegate is Kim Baker. Bruce, you can turn your camera off now.
There's a bad echo. I'm not sure.
I think it was Bruce's machine.
All right, do we have Kim Baker? Are they signed in yet? All right, then we'll go, if they come in, we'll come back to them, but no. All right, so Kim Baker is not coming in. Mr. Zerback, I guess you'll be up next.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, members of the committee and staff and the public. My name is Stefan Scherback, planner with Plantscape Inc., 104 Kimberley Avenue in Bracebridge. I'm here today representing the Christie family, who obviously own the subject property. Mr. Neil Christie had every intention to be here today. Unfortunately, work had to keep him away. I believe he's online and may be able to answer any questions that I can't. At the last committee meeting, there were many comments and concerns related to the application. I want to summarize the issues into two main categories. The first, in my mind, is a straightforward request to appropriately rezone the subject lands to its current legal and residential use that is currently on the property. The island has a legal residential dwelling, and it's appropriate, and there are appropriate accessory structures that are situated throughout. The township has already recognized this use on several occasions by issuing various building permits to update these structures. And together with the partial approval 10 years ago when council approved the permission to construct an accessory finger dock to this residential use. The subject request is technical in nature in my mind, and there's no question that the township has already recognized this use on several occasions. It was a concern, if this was a concern to the township, there's been many opportunities to question the use and not to permit any additional development on the property, including the issuance of building permits. Finally, your planning staff have clearly and concisely recommended this aspect of the applications on two separate occasions today and 10 years ago again, including the recommendation under your current official plan policies that actually contain tighter policies related to the use. Please remember that the township cannot extinguish a legally and non-complying, non-conforming use. Nothing in this application is seeking to enlarge any of these structures, replace them, we're focusing on an accessory use to the current residential structures and use. The second aspect of this application are the requested zoning variations. Again, this is broken down into two requests. The first is lot coverage. The applicants are seeking an increase from their permitted 10% to 10.9%. And on such a small island, this variation actually accounts for only 181 square feet. This is what we're talking about here. The applicants are they're not building anything that's extremely large, a large boathouse, a large structure. We're looking for a modest increase of 181 square feet. They're building a very small, they like to build a very small, the smallest possible functioning boathouse at approximately 350 square feet. Again, this is the size of the structure that we're talking about here. The second variation is related to cumulative shoreline structure width. And since the last meeting, the applicants had hired a professional surveyor to locate the south dock that was approved 10 years ago. The surveyor determined that this dock was perpendicular, and as a result, based on the direction and definitions of your zoning bylaw, this variation is no longer needed. And in fact, they're actually below the minimum required cumulative weight for shoreline structures on residential properties. So in conclusion, again, to remind council, the application in 2014 was supported by staff back then for an even larger dock structure that was proposed on the North Shore. However, due to several non-planning related concerns expressed by the neighbors in the adjacent area, this resulted in the applicants only proceeding with the 12-foot finger dock located on the south. They did not want to challenge council's decision at the time, and they just let this lie. The owners now feel it's appropriate to build this dock for their sailboat to provide shelter for other boat-related issues on the north side of the island. The reason why it's situated here is this area is deeper, it's safer, and they've designed a very modest structure in an attempt to be respectful to the adjacent property owners. From a land use planning perspective, this application has and continues to represent good planning. The only variance now is for a slight increase in lot coverage, and again to rezone the property to its current and legal use. As mentioned previously, the additional coverage is extremely modest, and in our opinion, the proposal clearly conforms to the township's official plan, and this opinion continues to be shared by your professional planning staff. We would respectfully request that the committee approve this application at this time. And if time permits, I just have one more quick comment here. I do want to touch on some of the comments that were received by the neighbors and those that you heard today. I think your staff have appropriately summarized them in the staff report. I'm in full support of the explanations in front of you. There's no safety issue here. The structure is tucked in. It's not extending further out into the area. If you look at the plans and how it's situated, if anybody's running through that property at 120 kilometers an hour, they're going to hit a point of land. And in fact, they're driving their boat illegally because it's that close to an island property. So it's not the fault of the boathouse, it's the fault of the driver. Somebody thinks they're going to be driving 120 kilometers an hour, less than 15 meters from anybody's property. It's just foolish. And with respect to the environmental issues, again, staff have appropriately addressed those comments in the report. I think if there are any other questions or comments, I'm more than happy to answer them. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sherlock.
Ms. Baker.
Is Miss Baker, is it Miss Baker? Kim Baker, is Kim Baker now online? Okay, if you can bring.
I apologize for being late. There was technical issues.
That's fine. If you could state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all. My name is Kimberly Baker. I live at 10 Edenbridge Drive, Etobicoke, Ontario, M9A 3E9. I'm speaking on behalf of the Bakers, Farriers, and Jerichos whom have property on Silver Island. I've sent in a copy of my speech from the last committee meeting for the Christie application, and I hope the council will review it again as the points still stand. As a neighbor, I wish to express my disappointment. It would seem that the safety concerns that were expressed in the last meeting were disregarded. I spoke about the fact that the channel between Silver Island and Duck Island has safety concerns, and the Blackadares have had close calls with no boathouse on Duck Island. Instead of making the changes to minimize any effects the design would have on the channel, the new design comes out further. Now, the representative was just speaking about that. In the design, it still looks like it comes out further. What was 40 feet now comes out 45 feet, and it does look like it protrudes into the channel more. I will state this again. We do not believe any development should be allowed on Duck Island, nor should the zoning be changed. In 2014, compromises were made, and it was understood that the Christies were an unfortunate situation, and the neighbors and council agreed that updating the structures on the island and rebuilding the dock that was considered to be grandfathered in would be appropriate. This was not to give the Christies leeway to ask for more or to take advantage of in order to change the zoning. In 2014, the Christies asked to change the zoning and build a boathouse. It seems like it's almost the exact same proposal as they'd given in 2024, but with minor differences. They were denied these permissions but given compromises. Just as they were denied in 2014, they should be denied now. The regulations for Muskoka have only become more strict. There is no reason why the decisions for denying an application should turn into accepting them now. Should any development or changes be allowed, we urge the council to make the decision that no further renovations or developments will be allowed in the future. The only renovations allowed should be to maintain the structure and its current uses. Duck Island should not be overdeveloped. If this proposal is allowed, this tiny island would set a precedent for any island of the same size, and the council would lose standing to deny overdevelopment on any other island or properties. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else? Do we have any other people wishing to speak either in favor or against this application?
Speak. Public.
Pardon?
It's not a public meeting, so only the owner.
The owner can speak. Yeah. So is the owner of Duck Island, if you could bring them in? If you could turn your camera on.
Mr. Christie.
Mr. Christie, if you could turn your island on, your camera on. Turn your,
Yes, can you see me
turn your
now?
island on and your camera off. I don't know.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can, and we can see you as well. So if you can start with your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Good morning. Yeah, my name is Neil Christie. I own Duck Island. My address is 19 Windsor Road, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the United States. Yeah, I think I don't have too much to add. I think the report by the township planning department, I think, addresses most of the issues, and my planner is addressed as well. As I said, what we're proposing is basically an 18-foot across boathouse. The long access to the island on the north side that has no development is 272 feet. So I don't think it'll have a major visual impact. It's only 13 feet high. The trees behind there are 50 or 60 feet high. So I don't think, contrary to what my neighbors feel, that it'll have a major impact. We've lived on the island now for 8 years. And we do feel we need a docking space there just to safely get on and off the island. And I think if anyone was in the area, you would see that it would be quite in the character of the other small islands in the area that have small boathouses on the leeward side of the island. So thank you very much for your attention.
All right, thank you very much. All right, let's turn it over to committee, or no, sorry. Don't want to rush things along here. Ms. Crowder.
Thank you, Chair Bosomworth, and good morning, members of committee. The first application to be heard this morning is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 1624 in the name of Christie. The subject lands are known municipally as One Island M25A, more commonly referred to as Duck Island. As Planning Committee may recall, this application was originally heard back in June of this year. Committee decided to defer the applications at that time in order to permit the applicant to consider bringing existing and proposed development into closer compliance with the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Since the time of deferral, an amended proposal has been put forward. The northerly dock has been reduced in width from 46 feet to 32 feet, a reduction of 14 feet, and has been relocated somewhat further to the west to create a greater distance between Duck Island and Silver Island. Additionally, an Ontario land surveyor has surveyed the property and found a 90-degree angle to measure the existing southerly dock to the high water mark, reducing the width measurement of the southerly dock. The revised zoning sketch can be found on page 732 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 1624 is to rezone the subject property from open space private island OS4 to waterfront residential water access WR3, and to allow zoning exemptions to permit the construction of a single-story boathouse and dock. Following deferral of the application in June, 2 public comments were received. The first comment is from Jane Ferrier, property owner on Silver Island, expressing their objection to the application. The letter states a disappointment that consideration was not given to remove the existing dock, attach the proposed dock to the dryland boathouse, or to remove the dryland boathouse and with living quarters. The letter also states that the township should have given them 3 weeks' notice of the application returning. Lastly, the letter states that information provided by the agent for the application is misleading in regards to the events of the similar application in 2014. The letter requests that the minutes from 2014 be made available. Lastly, the letter states that they still have concerns regarding the size and coverage of the island. Staff would note that as this is a returning application that did not require recirculation, there are no notification requirements in the Planning Act. Staff notified all who wrote in or attended the meeting in June in an effort to achieve proper consultation and engagement. I won't go into too much detail regarding the consideration of alternatives as the applicant's agent addressed these in their memo that is attached to the agenda. Lastly, the minutes from the 2014 meeting were sent to Jane Ferrier per their request. The second letter was received from Thomas Blackadar, property owner on Silver Island. This letter states concerns related to the following: lack of notification of the application returning to Planning Committee, that the application is largely the same as the application that came forward in 2014, that the island is far too small for additional development, the distance between Duck Island and Silver Island, and safety of boats traversing this channel, that at the June 2024 meeting, it was stated that the legal issues surrounding the property had been settled through the issuance of building permits in 2011 and 2014, and potential liability for township staff, officers, and council should its decision lead to accidents or environmental disasters. I can read either of these letters in full at the request of committee, and I also received a letter this morning from Heather Ferrier. It doesn't state where Ms. Ferrier lives, so I can't state whether they're abutting but I assume that they are near Jane Ferrier. And the letter is as follows. Dear Planning Committee, I, Heather Ferrier, have read the statement by the Christies and their planners, Stefan Scherbach, Landscape, stating that council in 2014 were in agreement for the building dock surrounding a boathouse, and that this was not pursued at that time because the Christies did not want to ruffle any feathers. I, Heather Ferrier, was at the 2014 council meeting, which explicitly denied permission to build a new boathouse. The minutes of the 2014 meeting show that the permission was not given, but instead denied. As council did not approve a rezone to open space OS4 or increase maximum coverage, they did allow a 48 by 12 foot dock in an OS4 zone. It would appear to me, based on the above information, the Christies are attempting to deceive the council into approving this request. Should there be any doubt on this, before council proceeds with this application, Neil and Susan Christie, as well as their planner, should be required to file an affidavit stating that council allowed the boathouse in 2014. Without these affidavits, council must not proceed with the present application, and if it does, will find that they are party to a dishonest transaction. The proposed exemptions are summarized on page 726 of the agenda package. The exemptions that were circulated are based upon WR3 permissions and include exemptions to permit the construction of a dock and boathouse on an undersized lot, to permit a total lot coverage of 11% where 10% would be permitted, and to permit a cumulative dock width of 75.1 feet where 67.9 feet would be the maximum. Staff would note that the revised proposal reduced the northerly dock width by 14 feet and brings the cumulative dock width within that which is permitted as of right under the WR3 zoning. Therefore, that exemption is no longer required. I'd like to take this time to address some of the concerns raised by neighbors who submitted letters of objection to help committee and members of the public better understand why staff have put forward the recommendation we have. One of the concerns raised by neighbors was the fact that a previous application, similar to the application before committee today, which was submitted in 2014. Township Council at that time defeated the request to rezone the property, denied the request for lot coverage, and ultimately approved the southerly dock that exists today. I would note that the staff report at that time recommended that the application be approved in its entirety, stating a preference that the dryland boathouse be removed or reduced in size. A common question that has been asked is what has changed since the previous application and the application today? Staff would note that the new application is being reviewed against a different zoning bylaw and a new official plan, and that 10 years have passed since the previous application, and the application itself is different in the sense that the dock configuration proposed to the north has changed, as it was originally proposed to extend further into the lake from the shore and was proposed to be 14 feet wider. Another concern raised by neighbors is the question surrounding a continuous residential use on the property. This issue was raised in 2014 during discussions surrounding the previous application. Several neighbors have questioned whether the residential use continued between 1980 up until a few years ago. However, the previous owner of the property provided an affidavit to the township swearing that the residential use of the property continued during this time. Additionally, building staff at the township received a legal opinion, and building permits were issued in 2011 for the interior renovation of the existing dwelling and dryland boathouse. Staff took the position during the 2014 ZBA that the use had continued. Additionally, I would note that the zoning of the property, the first ever zoning recognition was bylaw 1970-20, where the property was zoned residential. It was during the 87 comprehensive zoning bylaw update that the island changed zoning to OS4, and that was a township-wide rezoning exercise. And as we know, that that exercise, we've heard this a few times come forward for island properties, was largely based on a desktop review. And some of these islands that were better vegetated or may have appeared to have not been used were rezoned to OS4. However, the legal opinions in this case would suggest otherwise. Given these considerations, staff are of the position that the residential use is indeed legal non-conforming. A concern regarding the undersized nature of the lot was also raised, stating concerns that development will negatively impact wildlife habitat and fish habitat. Several letters stated that an environmental impact study is required if development is proposed on an undersized island. I would note that these letters referenced policy numbers of the previous township official plan. The particular policy these letters reference was carried forward in the new official plan and is found in section E4.6B. However, section D1.4 of the official plan allows the township to scope or waive the requirement for an environmental impact study based on the type and sensitivity of identified natural heritage features, and if the development and site alteration proposed are minor. The inland development on the property already exists and is not proposed to change through this application. All proposed development is above water where no tree removal or site alteration is required. Available mapping indicates that the fish habitat surrounding the entirety of this island is type 2 general fish habitat as opposed to type 1 significant habitat, which is classified as more sensitive habitat. Based on these factors, staff have felt comfortable waiving the EIS. However, committee can require such. Staff have also recommended that a site plan agreement be entered into, in part for a tree retention plan, which will map out every tree greater than 10 centimeters diameter at breast height. This agreement would be registered on title. The intent of this is to ensure that the environment continues to dominate over built form now and in the future. The last concern I want to touch on up front is the concern of the narrowness between Duck Island and Silver Island. Using available measurement tools, staff have measured the distance between Duck and Silver Island at 543.5 feet at the closest point. Staff would note that the boathouse is not proposed to be located at this point, but further to the west at a greater distance to Silver Island. Per the township's official plan, a narrow water body is defined as a minimum distance from shoreline to shoreline of generally less than 492 feet or at least 328 feet along both shorelines. The passageway between Duck and Silver Islands, therefore, is not considered to be narrow, and were the island zone WR3, a boathouse would be permitted as of right to extend 50 feet from the high water mark, and a dock would be proposed to extend 66 feet from the high water mark, were this to be not an undersized island. Staff would further note that the proposed dock and boathouse are to extend 40 feet from the high water mark. The revised proposal is about 45 feet at the furthest point, which is considerably less than what would be permitted as of right for a WR3 lot. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration. Staff recommend that the application be approved, subject to the following: that the draft bylaw be revised to prohibit any plumbing fixtures within the proposed boathouse, to restrict the height of the boathouse to the height which is proposed, being 13.2 feet, to remove the exemption for cumulative dock width, and to limit dock length to that which is proposed, and that the subject property and proposed development be made subject to site plan control, which will require that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title, along with securities if necessary, to implement a satisfactory tree retention plan prepared by a qualified professional for retention of vegetation, among other matters. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Ms. Crowder, thank you very much for that very thorough report, anticipating many of the questions I think this committee would have had. That said, does the committee have any questions of Ms. Crowder or the applicant? Santa Claus.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and through you to Ms. Crowder. And again, I echo, you answered many of my questions that I have, and that's great. Thank you very much. There's one that was brought up by one of the delegates about future development on the property. What would be possible in the future in development of this property if this was approved?
Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair Bosomworth, to Councillor Roberts. Given the undersized nature of the island, any potential changes would need to come through committee, either Committee of Adjustment or Planning Committee. So no further changes could occur as of right on the property without some kind of planning relief in future. And hence why we've also put a revision in the bylaw to just make clear that any length additions to the dock would also not be permitted as of right. So any future plans to potentially change the shoreline structures would require planning approval, and as would any inland development.
Councillor Kent. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't like this application when we saw it in the summer. I continue to not like this application. It's a tiny pinpoint of an island.
Councillor Kent, is this a question or opinion?
I guess it's a question too, but it's also an opinion. My question is, did staff consider the fact that they're adding a boathouse, requiring the owner to either eliminate the dry water boathouse or eliminate the extra dock they got back in 2014? I just think it's too much on a very small speck of island that's all not legal today. It's legal non-conforming, but it would not be legal in the new environment. And it's more than I'd like to see a trade-off here. If we're going to give them something else should have gone. So I wanted to hear staff.
I think the question, Ms. Crowder, is was any consideration given to
requiring removal
offsets?
Yes.
Given the undersize of the island, and if not, why not?
Through you, Chair Bosomworth, to Councillor Kent. I think part of that question I'm going to defer to the applicant's agent, whether they considered making concessions. But I would state that there's very strong legal outcomes for legal non-conforming rights. And as we've determined that the development that exists there today is legal non-conforming, to require them to remove such structures is not something that we would typically put forward in our recommendation. We've considered that this is an island property, and by nature, island properties, generally speaking, need a boathouse to function as an island property in the waterfront area and for safe access to that property. I know that the planning memo provided by Mr. Sherbak did address some of considerations of concessions, so I'll allow him, or I would ask if he could maybe speak to that part of it.
And then I
Mr.
have a
Sherbak?
follow-up.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member. Yes, I think actually there are quite a few concessions in front of you. There's concessions built into the bylaw that seek to limit any further extensions to dock structures that staff put in. There's limits. There's a concession to the height that was brought down to ensure that we're not meeting the maximum height for a single-story boathouse. There's the concession for the tree preservation in the site plan agreement, which is not normally required in any situation. I didn't touch upon those because frankly, we're in agreement with them. And again, concessions were, a reduction to the total width, getting a surveyor out there to reduce, to eliminate one of the variations. So again, there are several concessions there. And to the point of eliminating the dryland boathouse, well, then we're going under coverage. Then we don't need the coverage, the 181 square feet of additional coverage. We're below that. So I think the 181 square foot request is very modest. Any further concessions, we're well below the rights that are given to an individual for a waterfront residential property. Thank you.
Can I just
Supplementary, Councillor Kent. Yep.
Thank you. My question on concessions was more on in 2014, they got this dock that hangs out there 50 feet into the waterway on the other side of the island. And we gave that to them. And then they're now putting in another dock. So I see this as like a creeping takeover. So I wanted to know whether there was any consideration to the fact that that should have been eliminated when we added a boathouse.
Ms. Crowder, comments?
Through you, Chair Bosomworth, to Councillor Kent. I think all I could note is that if the property were zoned residentially, a dock 66 feet in length would be permitted as of right. And the dock that's there is 50 feet. And I suppose I would say that the southerly side of the dock is open to a very vast part of the lake. So the length is not posing any kind of safety concerns. However, I think that's all I could say from the planning perspective here on that.
Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. You have staff's recommendation in front of you. Of course, as part of our review of the application, we've considered whether or not we felt a need to require, for example, the removal of that southerly dock. And we haven't recommended that. Ms. Crowder has noted some of the reasons why. Another reason that I'm thinking is that that dock is on one side of the island and the proposed new dock and boathouse is on the other. So depending on which side of the island you're on, you're not going to see both at the same time. So that was a consideration. But you have our recommendation. Certainly if committee is considering removal of a structure, that's certainly within your purview, but we haven't recommended that. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from committee? All right. We have one resolution. All right. Here's a resolution. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommended Township Council that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 16/24 amended Christie be approved subject to the following. That the draft bylaw be revised to prohibit any plumbing fixtures within the proposed boathouse, to restrict the height of the boathouse to the height which is proposed, being 13.2 feet, to remove the exemption for cumulative dock width and to limit dock width to that which is proposed, and that the subject property and proposed development be made subject to the site plan control, which will require that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on the title, along with securities, if necessary, to implement a satisfactory tree retention plan prepared by a professional for retention of vegetation, among other matters. Committee, is there? Ms. Crowder, did I miss something or misstate something?
Through you, Chair, I apologize. I believe I heard you say limit dock width. I believe it's supposed to read dock length.
And to limit dock, did I say width? To limit dock length to that which is proposed. Somebody's listening. Yes. All right, committee. Committee, any discussions on that? Councillor Roberts.
Not a discussion, but a comment, and maybe through to you, Chair. There was, the delegate commented about boat safety, and we actually received a video on boat safety, which in my understanding, that's not within the realm of responsibility or ability of the township to do anything about that. That's with other bodies. Can you comment on that, given your area of expertise in this?
My area of expertise? Well, I would ask staff for that, but I think the answer is that by our bylaw says that it's not a narrow channel. And you know, boat safety is a matter of the driver, not the property owner. And because it's not on a narrow channel, then the proposed boathouse is not creating a safety concern.
Thank you.
Mr. Sharp, did I get it right?
Thank you. Yeah, I just, to add to that, there's the distinction of a narrow water body. This property isn't a narrow water body, but there's also under category 1 or large lakes, the notion of a restricted water body. And that's where the distance between shorelines is less than 250 feet. And in those instances, a single story boathouse with no rooftop sun deck is permitted, subject to some restrictions. But I just wanted to make that point that
Very good.
the boathouses would be permitted in that context as well. Thank you.
Committee, do we have any other discussion on this? Councillor Nishikawa. Good morning.
Thank you. Through you, it's a comment. I will not be supporting this application. I did not support the application in 2014. And in fact, not much has changed. I do keep my records of what was discussed and things, and I'm just very disappointed that we're trying to basically create. I don't think we're doing anybody any favors by doing this, quite frankly. And the island is very small. I have and some of the other concerns is even the topography of that particular island is very different than we see on some other islands. It's relatively flatter, I guess, and there's a lot of concerns that I have about flooding. We talk about flooding constantly, and I understand that they have rights and all that sort of thing. But again, I wonder about the septic system. I wonder about lots of things, and I'm trying to change the zoning, and I don't believe the zoning is appropriate at all to change. So I'm going to stick with what I voted in 2014 and feel that the council at the time knew what they were doing.
Crowder, could you comment on the flood zone and that point raised by Councillor Nishikawa?
Through you, Chair Bosomworth, Councillor Nishikawa's comment. Yeah, I can comment on the flooding. I guess I would say what's before you is a boathouse and a dock, and such structures by nature are located within the floodplain, and no habitable space is permitted within a boathouse. So from a policy standpoint, there is no concern there. And the inland development that is there is not proposed to change. So from our policy standpoint, there are no concerns regarding flooding. I could also speak about the septic point.
Yes.
One of the recommendations we put forward is a revision to the bylaw to prohibit any plumbing fixtures within the boathouse. And that is an acknowledgement and an effort not to exacerbate any kind of septic concerns or require any upgrading of a septic system that exists on the property today. So I hope that helps answer some of those questions.
It does. Thank you very much. Committee, are there any other discussions on this? Councillor Edwards.
Just a question, was the septic system, did it go through a stage 2 inspection to make sure everything was all right?
Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair Bosomworth, Councillor Edwards. As I understand it, I believe that it's a holding tank that's on the property. I'm getting the nod from the agent here. And as far as what goes into that issuance, I'd probably defer to our building department. Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Are you voting or
No.
got your hand up? Councillor Kent, I'll give you that.
Thank you. Regarding the holding tank, my understanding is, and I would love to hear from the agent on this, is that this was intended to be a short-term rental, okay, whether it be short or mid-term rental. But these people have other ownership in the area, and they're not going to be using it for their own use. The concept, the septic thing being a tank, is ridiculous to me. Why aren't we requiring them to deal with it properly if we're going to give them the residential ownership rights of WR4? I don't understand that. And particularly if it's a short-term rental, it's a large concern to me because it's going to be people coming in and out, and that's one of the reasons why they wanted the boathouse.
The issue of the issue, that's a question, but I think we won't bother dealing with that question because that's not what before us. People are allowed to use their property for short-term rental.
But how can we approve it? How can we approve the additional construction without proper septic?
Mr. Sharp?
Thank you, Chair. I would note that I believe we've promoted Mr. Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, as a panelist. So if there's specific questions around the septic, I would direct those questions to Mr. Snyder.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, Chair. So to respond to the question of the septic system, yes, it is holding tanks. That is an approved building code compliant solution to a septic system or a sewage system on the island. The reason for the condition or prohibition in the planning resolution of limiting plumbing in the boathouse would have the effect of not requiring any improvement to the existing system. Likewise, the proposed development is strictly marine related storage, and it would have no effect on, without any plumbing fixtures, no effect on the sizing of that sewage system. I hope that addresses the questions.
Thank you very much. No, I've called the vote. No more questions. I beg your pardon? I'm sorry. I've already called the vote. All those in favor? We count here.
Fine. Oh, okay. Slow down.
Hold your hands up, please.
2, 5, 6, and that's opposed. Do you agree with 5 in favor? Keep your hands up if you're in favor, please, just so I can.
I can vote, but in the end.
I'm not sure your position. So 6. So can you ask for opposed then?
Opposed?
2, 4.
Okay. Motion carried. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. All right. The same to you. All right. Now we are back to the Tatham Engineering report on Regional Climate Change Mitigation Plan.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Councillor David Clark here from Tatham. Just request if the clerk could add my colleague Elham to the panelists. She will be leading this presentation.
Good morning again.
Good morning again, and I apologize for my technical issues. I'm ready to present to the council members, the committee, and the chair, and the members of the public. Thank you for sharing the screen. My name is Elham Guruhi, and I am the manager of decarbonization and net zero with Tatham Engineering. With me in this call is Mr. David Clark, the Vice President of Building Engineering Services. We are here to present a regional climate change mitigation plan prepared by Tatham Engineering for the 6 Muskoka area municipalities. This presentation talks about the general purpose of this plan with the details of the Muskoka Lakes plan. Next, please. The milestone of the climate change actions in Muskoka are listed here. It started in 2020 by climate emergency declaration. Since then, Muskoka municipalities took many climate-related actions. In fall 2023, Tatham was retained to start preparing the regional climate change mitigation plan. A regional working group comprising of members from each area municipality was established. Tatham and the regional municipal group worked closely together throughout the project to finalize the plan. Next, please. There are many different initiatives and technical guidance documents published by federal and provincial governments that we reviewed carefully in preparing this plan, and the appropriate and relevant initiatives were considered in this plan. We have listed some of these studies here, and the full list of initiatives is in the report. Next, please. This plan is completed based on the framework provided in the PCP protocol, Partners for Climate Protection, and area municipalities can get recognition from PCP for completion of the milestones 1, 2, 3. Next, please. Therefore, our scope of work completely aligned with the PCP milestones 1, 2, 3, where task 1 was the GHG inventory and forecasting. Task 2 was to determine the greenhouse gas reduction targets, and task 3 was to prepare the regional climate change mitigation plan. Next. The purpose of this plan is to prepare the GHG inventory for the baseline year, so municipalities can understand the GHG emission profile within their assets, and to provide a guidance to area municipalities in their decision-making process by setting ambitious and achievable GHG reduction targets, and providing clear, simple, and effective action plans based on available technologies in the market. This is also a regional plan to make sure that all area municipalities are taking similar steps and actions. Therefore, when Muskoka Lakes gets to implement each project, they may require to complete additional assessments like engineering studies or energy studies, or a complete life cycle cost assessment may be required. Additionally, as the existing technologies advance and new technologies become commercially available, Muskoka Lakes can consider the impacts of the new technologies in accelerating this plan or recommending new projects. Therefore, this plan should be considered a living document. Next, please. Our first task was GHG inventory and forecasting. 2018 was considered as the baseline year because it is the most recent year with full information, not affected by pandemic. GHG emission inventory was completed based on the milestone 1 and the PCP protocol for all corporate assets using Environment and Climate Change Canada and US EPA emission factors. The global warming potentials used in this assessment are based on the IPCC 5th assessment report. Emissions are reported in tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, and all corporate assets, including buildings, fleet, streetlights, and traffic lights, are included in this report. In this pie, next, please. In this pie chart, we show the energy makeup of Muskoka Lakes operations for 2018 baseline, leading with diesel, followed by electricity, gasoline, propane, and fuel oil. It includes energy use at all buildings, fleet, and streetlights. Next, please. This chart showcases the GHG emission profile for Muskoka Lakes in 2018 based on the asset type. Buildings accounted for 34% of emissions, while fleet accounted for 65%, and streetlights contributions was only 1%. Next, please. Here we show the GHG emissions for buildings by operation type. Community centers are generating the highest GHG emissions, followed by public works yard. Most of the GHG emissions in the building sector are coming from building heating, cooling by different fuel types. Next. I don't know why the text is not showing, but I'll explain. To help us identify buildings that are potentially less energy efficient, we prepared the GHG emission intensity for buildings, which is defined by GHG emission in tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per square meter of the building area per year. Ramwood Public Works Yard and Milford Bay Community Center had higher GHG intensity for 2018. Many factors can affect the GHG intensity, including the operation type, fuel type, behavioral patterns, and efficiency of the building assemblies. Next, please.
Use it the more you create, I guess.
We also completed the GHG emission forecasting for business as usual scenario to year 2050 based on the framework milestone 1 provided in the PCP protocol. To project the future GHG emissions, we have modeled emission increases using population growth and urbanization patterns based on the census data and District of Muskoka's Phase 1 growth update report. The Environment and Climate Change Canada report was also used to project the effect of the climate change and global warming on building energy use on heating and cooling degree days. And for business as usual forecasting, it is assumed that the operating patterns will remain the same as the baseline year with no actions to reduce energy consumption or GHG emissions. The cost of the energy, including the cost of carbon, is also forecasted to year 2050. Next, please. Here we can see the forecasting results. The GHG emissions is projected to increase differently for different corporate assets, but in total, it is estimated that Muskoka Lakes will see an emission increase of 10% about the 2018 baseline by 2030, and an increase of 18% by 2050. The energy costs also forecasted, which includes changes in energy costs due to carbon cost increase. It is estimated that Muskoka Lakes energy costs will increase by 300% by 2050 under business as usual scenario. Next, please. Our second task that was completed was the GHG emission reduction target. We completed a detailed review of existing reports and plans for Muskoka Lakes, as well as the provincial and federal plans and targets. The Made in Ontario Environment Plan, which is the Ontario's plan for emission reductions, sets a GHG reduction target of 30% below 2005 baseline by 2030. The federal plan sets a GHG reduction of 40 to 45% below 2005 baseline by 2030. We also consider the emission profile of Muskoka Lakes to make sure the targets that we are setting are feasible. By feasible, we mean technologically and economically feasible based on the commercially available technologies. It's also worth mentioning that to be economically feasible, it's also very important to reduce the emissions gradually, and that's how we set our emission mitigation plan in the next few steps. Next, please. Therefore, Muskoka Lakes GHG reduction targets is set to 45% reduction below baseline year by 2030 and achieve net zero by 2050. The 45% reduction aligns with the higher target from the federal plan. Next, please. And the final task was the GHG Regional Climate Change Mitigation Plan. To achieve the targets set in the previous step, our plan is based on 3 pillars. The first pillar is to decarbonize the existing corporate assets through building, fleet, and streetlight retrofits. The second pillar is to offset the remaining emissions using renewable energy generation through rooftop solar photovoltaic panels and additional solar PVs on corporate assets or within community, or alternatively, clean electricity purchase agreements. And the final pillar is to have a net zero policy for new buildings and new fleet to make sure our efforts in decarbonizing the existing corporate assets will continue to get the Muskoka Lakes to net zero by 2050. With considering these 3 pillars, we determine what it takes for Muskoka Lakes to reach their targets and to decarbonize their existing assets. Therefore, we determine specific plans for buildings, fleet, and streetlights. Next, please. To determine the mitigation plan for buildings, we completed a feasibility assessment of the available technologies and only considered retrofits that their potential GHG reduction compared to their costs are high. The GHG mitigation plan for Muskoka Lakes building consists of the following recommended retrofits: replacement of main existing heating cooling units to air source heat pumps when they reach their end of life, installation of rooftop solar PVs on corporate buildings, and replacement of all non-LED lightings to LED lightings. Additionally, some additional solar photovoltaics are recommended to offset the remaining building emissions. We have completed a high-level sizing of the proposed retrofits to determine the possible GHG reductions. With implementation these recommendations, Muskoka Lakes GHG emissions for buildings can be reduced to 52% from 2018 level by 2030 and achieve net zero by 2050. Next, please. To determine the implementation plan for building, we consider the remaining life of the existing system and energy use index of the building HVAC equipment, meaning that we prioritize buildings with lower energy efficiency. It is assumed that all buildings will consider the retrofits. Muskoka Lake has this flexibility to decide to decommission some older buildings and replace them with net zero new buildings. It is also assumed that any future plans for expansion or new building constructions will consider net zero design. Therefore, new additions will not affect the future GHG emissions. Next, please. We also have determined the installation cost of the equipment for buildings, fleet, and streetlights, as well as the cost of energy and carbon savings for buildings. The estimated costs are obtained from supplier with some contingency for installation. Therefore, it is not a full construction cost and does not include any costs associated to building upgrades that may be needed to implement the measures. Please note, as technologies advance, the cost will reduce over time. So in our cost assessment, we did not consider any future opportunities, any funding opportunities as well, that may be available for the municipalities to use. Next, please. A snapshot of the proposed retrofit implementation timeline and costs is provided here with details in the report. By 2030, Muskoka Lakes is planned to invest around $4 million to complete the recommended retrofits for 8 buildings to air source heat pump, LED, and rooftop solar PVs. Please note that even though we listed the Port Carling Community Center and Milford Bay Community Center for the short-term retrofits due to the age of their HVAC equipment and efficiencies, we understand that those 2 buildings are already scheduled for replacement in 2024. Therefore, Muskoka Lakes can consider postponing the air source heat pump retrofit plan for these buildings to the long term. From 2032 to 2042, to offset the remaining emissions by continuing to implement the building retrofit plans, as well as the installing the additional solar PVs, the estimated investment needed is $11 million. Next, please. Our recommendations for the fleet is based on the federal and provincial plans to make zero-emission vehicles and EVs available for Canadians. Therefore, we recommended to replace all light and medium-duty vehicles and 35% of heavy-duty vehicles to zero-emission vehicles by 2030 when they reach their end of life. By 2050, it is recommended that Muskoka Lakes convert all fleet to zero emission. The recommendations also included adding EV charging infrastructure to support the 2030 EV transition plan. It is assumed that after 2030, public charging stations will be readily available and the Muskoka Lakes won't require to install more. With this plan, Muskoka Lakes can reduce 45% of fleet GHG emissions by 2030 and achieve net zero by 2050. Next, please. To implement this plan and replace vehicles and installing charging stations by 2030, the estimated cost for Muskoka Lake is $9.2 million. It is recommended a separate fleet plan to be prepared based on the most recent inventory and age of the fleet. By 2050, Muskoka Lakes will this plan to replace all fleet to zero emission with an estimated cost of $13 million. Next, please. The general recommendation for streetlights is to convert non-LED lights to LED lights when they reach their end of life. It is understood that most, if not all, of the Muskoka Lakes lights have been converted. Next, please. And to compare the energy costs of the net zero plan to business as usual, we prepared this chart for buildings. This chart highlights the financial impact of energy cost savings over time, spanning from 2018 to 2050. The dark green area represents the energy cost savings achieved each year with the net zero plan compared to business as usual scenario. The graph effectively highlights the financial benefits of implementing retrofitting measures to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Next, please. And as a summary, at the 2018 baseline, 34% of Muskoka Lakes emissions were coming from buildings, 65% were coming from fleet, and 1% from streetlights. The GHG reduction targets were set for short and long term. The short-term 2030 target is to achieve 45% reduction below baseline, and the long-term target is to achieve net zero by 2050. By implementing the recommendation in this plan, Muskoka Lakes can reduce 52% of the GHG emissions from building sector and 45% from their fleet by 2030 and achieve net zero by 2050. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that extensive and very interesting report. Committee, do we have any questions? It's a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, isn't it?
I understand a lot of information is in there.
Councillor Roberts.
Yes, it was a very detailed report, and I scanned every word, but it's going to take some time. That's why it's up for us. This is a comment, not a question.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Because it's I'm not going to.
We don't have a resolution here.
No. So, anyways, thank you for this report, and it appears to us you've laid it out that we've got a lot of big decisions to make and costly decisions which are needed. Thank you very much.
Committee, any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was well done.
Okay. And sorry, just one item, Mr. Chair. Sorry,
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to check. I think we had on the Zoom call, on the Zoom version, there was some issues with the fonts on the screen. I just wanted to say we will check with staff if the version that's in the report that you've got is legible.
All right, thank you. Sorry, see we have Councillor Nishikawa and then Councillor Burry.
Thank you. I mostly wanted to ask, essentially, what comes first, I suppose, and or recommendations that the little steps, I suppose, that we can make sooner. And is that in the report? I didn't quite. We zipped through it fairly quickly, but also, again, some of those smaller issues.
This report mostly focused on the large retrofits, but any smaller issues in terms of the enhancing the energy efficiency will help. And we listed them in the separate report, this conservation and demand management plan. which is approved by the committee. For this retrofits that we mentioned here, we also prepared a implementation planning, saying that, okay, which one of them to tackle first and to consider as a first option. So in general, gradual changes, that's what makes it feasible for municipalities. I understand that a lot of decisions needs to be made and a lot of investments, but there are funding opportunities, and gradually implementing these, it's the way to get there.
Mr. Chair, could I just have a follow-up?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I'm also very interested in finding out what our awareness is of federal grants that might be available, or provincial grants, but mostly federal. I'd like to see if there's monies on a higher level.
We have listed some of the funding opportunities in the report, but I understand that there are some available from the FCM through Green Municipal Fund, which is energy related. And those fundings are specifically tailored for municipalities to reduce their energies. And there are some provincial fundings also available.
Councillor Burry.
Thank you. I'm just going to remind our committee that we had an opportunity to actually take some baby steps with Milford Bay and doing a wrap on the insulation and doing an air source heat pump, and we found that there was issues with electrical and other pieces. So we are going to have to take baby steps. And I know the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund pretty well. And there's lots of things there, but we will have to take very, very bold steps to get access to that. Switching your light bulbs to LEDs is not going to do it anymore. So we have a decent plan here and some interesting ideas. And I just think that as a committee and as a council, for us to do anything, we're gonna have to be very brave.
Councillor Roberts.
Just one final point, and to the presenters, we can see the numbers quite clearly on the presentation that was provided in the report. So there's an issue someplace, but that's okay. I just want to comment that I did share the link to your presentation and your report with Climate Action Muskoka. And they did have an opportunity to go through it, and I can just say that what they came back to me was very encouraged to see a clear path to corporate emissions reductions should this be adopted. And I think we'll probably adopting most of it, but parts of it in a baby steps, as my friend Councillor Burry has stated. Thank you.
Committee, I'm going to suggest at the moment that we take a 15-minute break. Director Huff has a report later in the agenda, and if with committee suggests recommendation or approval, let's move that up as soon as we come back. And if we could ask Tathams to stay on the line for 15 minutes, and when we come back, we might have some more questions for you. Does that work for everybody? All right, we'll see you at 1:45.
thing about me. I don't want to know. Anyhow, I found it very odd and I kept thinking it's not him. Well, I don't think it's him. But at the end of the day.
Your worship.
I'm sorry, you're sending me.
Yeah, sit down.
Bit of his there over here. Say the pit of unravel. Yeah.
Your mics are on.
All right, everybody. If we could get back, are we live yet? We are live. Okay. Next on our agenda, Director Huff is going to give us a report on the climate mitigation, and then we can have further discussion. It's all yours.
Thank you, Chair. So the report that I put on the agenda really to accompany the plan and the presentation by Tatham Engineering is intended to provide a high-level overview of the report. And just for that purpose, I'd just like to identify a couple key points that I think might be helpful for this committee to keep in mind. So the first one is the recommendation before you is not an endorsement of this plan at this time. We recognize it's a very meaty document and we'd like to give you some time to review it in full. And then if you have comments, to do so and bring it and provide them to me by, I think it was January 20th. And then we'll bring the plan back in February for consideration by this committee. This is really, it's really intended to be an aspirational report. It doesn't commit council or the committee to make any of these changes, although it certainly does reflect the commitments that have been made in the climate declaration, as well as those that are in the strategic plan of the municipality. At such time as you're making key decisions on assets, operations, facilities, when you make those budget decisions, that's really the time that you are going to decide on whether or not to incorporate some of the recommendations that are included in the report. And then just also to highlight that because this was a regional approach, so the information that's been provided, the methodology and some of the recommendations are those that were found to be common amongst all of the municipalities in the district. And so there's certainly an acknowledgement that, number one, things have happened since 2018, both in operations and facilities that aren't in this document at this point in time. But as well, there's some unique opportunities in our municipality and maybe even challenges as well. And so this is a first step. This is a living document, and the intent is to update it on a regular basis to reflect those decisions that we make along our decarbonization route, if you will, over the years. And so really just a more granular and specific approach to the municipality would essentially be the next step that we would take in a couple of years. This gets us to where we want to be as a baseline, and then future updates will really get into the details of what that decarbonization looks like as we go through the years. So with that, I think I'll leave that. Happy to answer any questions. I believe Tatham is still available online as well if there's any questions as well.
Committee. Questions to our director? Oh, questions or comments? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. I'm reading through this in-depth report that was developed by experts. And I'm saying to myself, am I going to find something that they've missed? Highly unlikely. But what I think we need for this board of directors, which we are, is a Coles Notes version specifically focused for our township. That, of the, specifically when we're taking a look at, page 208 on, where we talk about the cost implementation plan. If we could break that out of the report and sort of have it, in another table, that could be our living document, because I think we have the plan and all that, But if it's the implementation plan, we could break it down, and that's what we can use to build the plan to 2050, which I don't think I'm going to have an opportunity to read. So, or understand. So anyways, that's what it, so, and also, I know we talked at least very on this when it first started. There's low hanging fruit that we can really get onto right away, that in the plan someplace, but it's such as charging stations. For example, at the Milford Bay Community Center because people are always trying to find, or at the Walker's Point community, and also be looking at some of our vehicles that are is right away, the next vehicle we buy needs to be a hybrid or an electric car type of thing, just to start our journey in that area and what happens. So that's what I'm thinking. So those are my thoughts. But again, low hanging fruit. What are some of the things we can do? Because we did describe this as an emergency. That's it. You know, this is an emergency. Well, that was 4 years ago or more. And now we're finally getting a report where we haven't really, we've done a little bit as Councillor Berry was saying at Milford Bay, but there must be other things we should really be thinking about. All right, thank you.
Committee? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Roberts mentioned it, electric vehicles and that we had passed, we were putting charging stations in Port Carding and Bala, but it's all the other ones and that unless the hotels are starting to put charging stations in, they're not going to have people unless we put them in Windermere and Manette and everything else like that. So, you know, we've got a long way to go before we get to that stage and that. And if you had electric vehicle only and you were stuck in that snowstorm, you know, it might be something. So we really got to look at the whole picture and that, but there's some things that we could do like window coverings and that for some of our community centers, you know, how they put the plastic over them. We could get a net value right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from committee? Good. Well, thank you very, we have a resolution, sorry. We have a resolution just moved by Councillor Mazin, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be resolved that the final draft greenhouse gas inventory and climate change mitigation plan be received for information purposes, and that committee provide feedback to the Director of Development Services and Environmental Sustainability by January the 20th, 2025, in order to facilitate its finalization at committee on February the 13th. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Sorry, Councillor Ishikawa, I moved too quickly there. You have your hand up, Councillor Ishikawa.
Yes, thank you. I mostly just wanted to ask sort of about the next steps, but do we have an actual committee that looks at our climate plan? Like is it a separate committee or do we just find this out at individual meetings?
The staff is indicating to me at the moment we do not.
May I suggest we do?
What was that?
We don't have a separate committee that the planning committee is.
Okay, so for clarification, we don't have a separate committee. We are doing it through the planning committee. Any other questions? I did call a vote. All those in favor? I did read the resolution. All those in favor? Any in opposition? Okay, carried. Thank you very much. So then our next item on the agenda is a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment and consent application. It is or B, it's a report plan 2024-177, B 44-6422 ML. and B 5024 ML and ZBA 4024 in the name of POTTOW. Ms. Crowder.
Thank you, Chair Bosomworth. We're just getting the presentation keyed up. Okay, so the next applications to be heard are concurrent consent applications B 446422 ML, B 5024 ML, and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 4024 in the name of POTTOW. The subject lands are known municipally as One Island Wistowe. Next slide, please. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted consent sketch on page 310 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the consent applications is to create 3 new waterfront residential lots on Wistowe Island and to grant a right-of-way over severed Lot A and the retained lot in favor of severed lots B and C in the same ownership. Next slide, please. I would also direct committee's attention to the submitted zoning sketch on page 309 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to gain an exemption from section 3.20 of zoning bylaw 2014-14, being that in the case of a severance, the effect of such a severance cannot cause remaining buildings or remaining lands to be in contravention of the zoning bylaw. In this case, docks with a cumulative width of 110.9 feet are proposed to remain on the retained lot, whereas the maximum permitted cumulative dock width based on a resultant lot frontage of 520 feet is 75 feet. Additionally, the purpose of ZBA 4024 is also to restrict future land-based buildings and structures on severed lots A, B, and C to site-specific development envelopes as recommended within the submitted scoped environmental impact study prepared by Beacon Environmental Limited and dated March 8th, 2024. Next slide, please. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 21 days in advance of this meeting, and 5 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the Township's Chief Building Official, stating no objection to the application. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the Township's Manager of Public Works, stating that civic addressing changes of the existing dwelling will be required in the future when or if more development occurs on the severed lots. Address changes should be completed at no cost to the Township and to the satisfaction of the Township's Operational Services Department. Comments were received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, stating that they have no concerns with the applications. However, noting that this property is water access only and can expect a 25 to 30-minute emergency service response time, limited to when our vessels are in the water. Fire Smart Homeowners Manual should be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Comments were received from Dennis Durango, Specialized Services Team Lead for Hydro One, stating no comments or concerns at this time. And lastly, comments were received from district staff stating that district staff would not be opposed to the approval of the applications, provided that the appropriate development control techniques, building envelopes, and recommended mitigation measures outlined in the scoped environmental impact study prepared by Beacon Environmental Limited, dated March 8th, 2024, are implemented. Next slide, please. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended the following: that consent applications B 446422 ML and B 5024 ML be approved, subject to standard conditions of consent, the entering into a consent agreement, rezoning of the proposed individual water access points, and the submission of a satisfactory archaeological assessment. Further, staff recommend that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 4024 be approved, subject to a revision to the draft bylaw to restrict development envelopes for a leaching bed distribution pipe, as recommended in the scoped environmental impact study, for severed lots A, B, and C of consent applications B 446422 ML and B 5024 ML, along with any necessary changes to Schedule 3. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crowder. I believe the applicant agent is Mr. Fauner. Good morning, Mr. Fauner. As you know, you got 5 minutes.
Yeah, good morning, Chair Bosomworth, members of Planning Committee, Stephen Fauner. Northern Vision Planning Limited, 109.
Could we, we're having a little difficulty hearing you, Mr. Fauner. If you could adjust your microphone or something. It was just a little muted.
Yeah, is that any better?
That's a bit better, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'll start again then. Stephen Fauner, Northern Vision Planning Limited, 109 Meadow Heights Drive, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L1A4. I'm here today representing Frank POTTOW and Leslie POTTOW, who are the owners of the property. Frank, that's his middle name. I think the notices went out. Victor is his given name, his given first name. So hopefully no confusion there. I'd like to thank staff for their positive report. I think we maybe had slightly different approaches to this application, but we came to the same conclusion, and I'm thankful for that, and so is my client. Anyways, getting into the PowerPoint presentation, I'll go as quick as I can. There's lots of slides here. Next. Just a listing of the properties. I just wanted to note, and actually we'll go next to the severance sketch. Yeah, go ahead. So in terms of this application, it's for 3 new vacant lots. Interestingly, the one that is 2.5 acres is the one with the smallest frontage. The northeast and the southeast lots both have well over 500 feet of frontage, in fact, 570 feet of frontage roughly. And the actual frontage on the retained lot is 850 feet, just for information. Next. This just shows the right-of-way, proposed right-of-way into the to service the properties. I do have a photograph showing where that comes up from the northwest lot, and it's an excellent way to access all of the properties. Next. This is just a close-in showing the existing buildings that are on the retained lot. Historically, a lot of these have been there for a long time, and there are such things as change houses and a shower building that we don't normally see anymore, but historically they were fairly common at one time. Next. So this is overall the frontage of the proposed retained lot, showing the existing shoreline structures. Next. And this is just taken from the southwest corner of that lot. It does rise up in the middle. I would not suggest that these are hugely steep slopes at this location, but there definitely are some slopes. Next. And this is looking at the existing dwelling that is there. It is a historical dwelling of which the POTTOWs have received an award in the past for its restoration. Next. And this is just a view on the property of that particular dwelling. Next. And this is the one of the 2 boathouses that is on the property. Next. And this was an old sleeping cabin. It's now storage, and that's all it's used for. Next. And this is the existing septic bed, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Next. So back out to the frontage, this is going around to the northwest part of the property, which would be part of severed lot A. Next. And you can see in the middle of this photograph, this is the area that's quite low and is quite accessible from the water. You can see that there is a bit of a access way. There is a current pathway there. Next. And this is that pathway taken from on the property. This is on severed lot A. Next. And this is looking northeast. You can see where it starts to slope up, and this is towards severed lot C. Next. And this is a frontage of severed lot C. Next. And this is getting around towards the end of the island. The slopes in this area are fairly steep. Next. And this is going around the northeast corner of the island or northeast end of the island. Next. And this is on the severed lot C actually, and you can see some of the steep slopes. Next.
Mr. Fawner, just a heads up, you're at 4 minutes already.
Oh, okay. Next, go ahead. Yeah, let's just keep going through these slides here. Yeah, keep going. So in terms of the planning analysis, certainly it's a deer wintering area, and Beacon Environmental has done a scoped EIS. Next. And in terms of the frontages and areas, we meet the current official plan and the new official plan that we meet it except for 2 lots, but I'll just show you in the moment. We do meet the intent of the policy because we do have a 10.5 acre island, so you can divide it by 4. Next. Go ahead, next. This is a drawing that John Hiley did draw up to try and comply with the 2.5 acres per lot. And you can see where the one lot line, the rear lot line of the routine lot, goes through the actual septic tank itself. So it's actually best if this line is a little further to the north, but it does shrink 2 of the lots a little bit, but 2.2 acres for each of those is slightly under the 2.5, and we meet the intent of the official plan with a 10.5 acre island. Next. And this is from Beacon Environmental Report showing the building envelopes, especially for the land-based ones. Next. And
Mr. Fawner, can you wrap up, please?
Sure. And just to make note that we're going to be using 2 individual access points on Macassa Point, which is on Lake Rosso, about 1 kilometer away, to service the 3 new lots. Next. And in conclusion, I agree with staff that it does conform with both the district and both of the township official plans, and it is consistent with the PPS. Thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody wishing to speak either in favor or in opposition to this application? All right. Committee, let's start with questions. Do we have any questions for staff or the applicant? Councillor Kent. And
through you to Mr. Fawner. You made a comment about them having access at Macassa Point. I don't know what that is. You're saying that they've contracted 3 new parking spots?
Mr. Fawner?
Yes, through the chair, they actually own 2 properties on Macassa Point, which is right at the mouth of the Joseph River, about 1 kilometer away. So they're privately owned. They're all owned by the POTTOW family, and they plan on getting access for 2 of the properties through 1 of the lots and 1 of the lots through the other property. So, and that is permitted by your new official plan.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Roberts?
Yes, he just the agent has just answered my one question on the Halls Road properties, so I won't ask that one. But just when this slide was up on showing the right of way, and there was a comment about the septic system that the line would have to move a bit. The diagram appears, to what I've seen, the right of way goes right through the septic system. Is that correct, or did I not line it up properly?
Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair Bosomworth, to Councillor Roberts. I can share the zoning sketch again if you'd like on the screen. We can take a look at it.
The ones that's checkered in yellow and black that shows the right of.
Oh, the consent sketch. Okay. Yeah, so we can see, so if you could just go to slide 2, please. So the right of way is shown in yellow. It's a little bit, it's a very faint yellow on the screen. But the septic system is to the southeast of the right of way on the retained lot. You can see there's a dashed box on the retained lot there. Here, I'll get up and show you.
Oh, that's okay. I see it.
Oh, okay.
Just story through you, Chair.
Yes.
So there was a comment made by Mr. Fawner about the lines would have to be adjusted a bit on a septic system. Where is it located?
Yes, through you, Chair Bosomworth to Councillor Roberts. I believe that what Mr. Fauner was getting at is if the lots were to be adjusted to all achieve a 2.5 acre size, the size of the retained lot would need to be reduced because the retained lot is proposed to be 3.6 acres in size. So you'd have to then move that easterly lot line for the retained lot further to the southwest, and then that creates an issue of then encroaching over the septic system. So I believe that is what he was communicating.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kent, I think you had your hand up again.
I did. I just had one question, which was, is it the applicant's intention to develop these immediately? Do we know?
Mr. Fauner?
Yes, through the chair. These are actually for family members. These are for children. The POTTOWs have owned this island for some time, and certainly it's their long-term intention to keep it, and it will be, these lots will be for family, for children.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from committee? Seeing none, let we have some resolutions here. There are 4 of them and they're all long. So here we go. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, yes, and seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be resolved, the Planning Committee recommended Township Council the consent application B4422 ML POTTOW be approved subject to the following conditions. That a satisfactory registrable description bracket deed of the severed lot together with any required rights of ways or easement be submitted to the township along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The confirmation be received that the township is satisfied that the resultant lots are satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal and that any problems identified with any existing sewage system be corrected to the satisfaction of the township. The cash in lieu of parkland be dedicated to the township in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the newly created lot, vacant lot, or the entire lands, whichever is less. If cash in lieu of parkland is paid for the assessed value of the entire lands, this condition shall be deemed complete for all 3 consent applications B44/64/22 and B50/24/ML. That the owners be enter into a satisfactory consent agreement with the township pursuant to section 51(26) of the Planning Act. Said agreement shall be registered against the title of the lands and shall contain provisions to the satisfaction of the township whereby the owner agrees, A, to use soils that have a demonstrated ability to effectively retain phosphorus or equivalent septic abatement technologies, which may include the use of soils with appropriate elemental composition to bind phosphorus or pre-post treatment phosphorus controls over the long term for a private on-site sewage disposal system on severed lot A and retained lot of consent application B44/22ML. Not to utilize public parking and docking facilities as the principal means of access to the retained and severed lot A of consent application B44/22/ML. That adequate long-term parking and docking facilities used to access severed lot A of consent application B44/22ML be secured at all times, or that severed lot A will not be transferred/sold separately from its respective individual water access point, and that the recommendations of the scoped EIS prepared by Beacon Environmental Limited dated March 8th, 2024 be implemented, that the zoning be approved to permit 1059 Halls Road and unit number 3 to function as an individual water access point for severed lot A of consent application B44/22/ML if necessary, and that an archaeological assessment be completed by a qualified professional demonstrating that the proposed development will not negatively impact any potential archaeological resources. Any discussion on that point, that resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, carried. Wow. We have 4 in total? Can we?
I'm just, it looks like maybe you could help us, Bryce and Emily. Number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Are they
with the
all?
exception of the numbers of the.
Can you get
the
your speak? Can you
application.
get your mic on? Yeah. So we're just trying to find a way to expedite this.
Yeah, we have two more rather lengthy resolutions, and they seem to mimic very much the one that the chair just read. I don't know if you have an opinion on whether they need to be read in full again, or what. I was just looking perhaps sections C and D. On subsection 4, there's a few slight differences there. I don't know if you either of you wish to comment.
It's in the report, right?
And they were published in the report, is that correct?
Correct.
Through you, Chair Bosomworth, the resolutions for the 3 consents are largely the same. They have different consent numbers referenced in them and different individual water access points referenced in them. My understanding was that they did have to all be read out, but I'll leave that for you to discuss. They are published in the report, so potentially maybe screen sharing might be an option, but I think maybe I'll defer to Director Huff.
Director Huff.
Thank you, Chair. So the thought was it was important to have 3 separate resolutions to provide the owner an opportunity to choose which of the consents to complete individually in order. How that happens here today is up to really the clerk and the chair.
Well, the procedural bylaw does permit, provided the resolution is included in full in the report, it does permit with the agreement of committee that the chair not read the entire resolution, that he just referenced the committee report, and that the vote be taken from there, but I'll leave it up to all of you to determine.
Well, let's just vote on this one. We have this one already. I read it. I called this. Did I call this one?
Yeah, I think we're good on that one.
It was carried.
Yeah.
All right, it is carried. Thank you. All right, committee, I'm going to suggest that I just reference the other 2. The 4th one is completely different. I'm just going to reference the other 2.
The number.
Yeah. So the next one, it starts with, and then I'll just read the first, be resolved because it has the references to the application numbers. Be resolved, the planning committee recommend to Township Council the consent application B4422 ML POTTOW be approved with a long list of conditions that are very similar to the previous one. Any questions, comments on that?
You need a mover and a seconder, Chair.
I'm moved by Councillor Zavitz. Second by Councillor Nishikawa.
Through you, Chair, you just referenced the first consent. So the second one is B64.
Thank you once again. So this one is moved by Councillor Edwards, second by Councillor Mazin. Be resolved, the planning committee recommend to Township Council the consent application B6422, Ms. Crowder, be approved. Any discussions on that one? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. And the final one that is similar. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor McIntyre, be it resolved that the planning committee recommend to Township Council that consent application B50/24 POTTOW be approved. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor? Thank you. It's already been approved. All right. So the final one is moved by Councillor Kent, second by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to the Township Council that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-40/24 POTTOW be approved, subject to a revision to the draft bylaw to restrict development envelopes for a leaching bed distribution pipe as recommended in the submitted scoped EIS for severed lots A, B, and C of consent application B/5 44/64/22 ML and B 50/24/M ML, along with any necessary changes to Schedule 3. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, our next item is.
Thank you very much, committee. Have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Snyder, you are next on our agenda and you're going to report on the sewage system inspection.
Thank you, Chair Bosomworth and committee members. I'm here today to present the sewage system 2024 sewage system maintenance inspection program review of our inaugural year of the enhanced program. As you know, the newly adopted program is comprised of two parts: Phase 1 inspections conducted by township staff and Phase 2 inspections conducted by a contracted provider, Envision Consultants, or at the option of the property owner, private enterprise. Through the first year, a total of 1,075 systems were reviewed by both streams of the program. As a result of that, I would deem the program a success for several reasons. A total of 190 systems were brought into compliance prior to the end of this year. Properties identified as requiring immediate repair, there were limited, have also been brought into compliance. And improved education opportunity delivered by both Envision Consultants and township staff has expanded our reach to a further population. Additionally, though anecdotally, we have seen systems replaced in advance of Phase 2 inspections voluntarily by property owners, and I see that as a win in advancing treatment and improving the conditions of existing systems. I'll leave it at that, and I think thank you for the opportunity to present today. The reports obviously are available, and Envision is here as well, standing by to respond to questions, so they may need to be promoted still.
Thank you very much, Mr. Snyder.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the first year of the program. Committee. I know we had a very thorough report, but surely there are some questions. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you for recognizing me. Thank you for the very thorough report, Mr. Snyder. You know, I have talked to you about it, and it's a really good report, and it's also a good step forward in our plan to protect the environment. An excellent step forward. I just have a couple of questions. The first one being, there's three options for the option for the property owner to engage their own licensed contractor to fulfill the Phase 2 inspection. How do I word this? Does the township, or has the township, or had considered maybe spot checking some of these that were done by third party? Because the only reason I bring that up is I listened to the audit report from the Ontario government, and they talk about, they failed to follow or to confirm. So I'm just asking you that question. If we don't, can we work it in that we do a couple of spot checks? Thank you. And I didn't have another question.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. Through you. Yes, we have had opportunity to spot check some where reports received identified issues that required immediate attention, be it issuance of a permit or by just simply attending site and providing some additional direction. Further to that, yes, we would have the opportunity to increase that breadth to some degree. Obviously, the limitations of staff time and capacity
would be considered in the extent to which we implement as such.
Second, supplementary.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. And I think that we as council, we could maybe present and entertain funding a little more, either with the contractor that we have, to do just some checking. I'd leave it up to staff, because I just think it's a good little, because I do hear from the community speculation of some stuff, but we had to check it and balance. Anyways, that's all. My second one is a comment, so I'll hold off.
No, you can comment now, because we don't have a resolution on it. It's just a report.
Okay, so I did talk to Mr. Snyder about this on page 692, and you don't have to go and look for it. But it says staff communicates in the report that in 2024, program results, feedback, experience of staff and the consultant were reviewed and will result on some potential improvements. I'm just, I suggested to Mr. Snyder, in the interest of continued improvement, I think it prudent that we also somehow solicit the feedback and experience of the customer or the property owners that have done this by simply, my suggestion is including a short, maybe 5-question survey where the customer could reply back on their experience, and maybe we can gain something out of that could improve our rollout and our delivery and our service. So I'm just suggesting that maybe you staff could take that under consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder, any comments on that?
Thank you, through you. That is something we can entertain. I think we have seen significant commentary or feedback from property owners to both township staff and Envision. And we, as a group, have taken that into consideration in preparing for 2025, in streamlining some of our communications. And I think there's also opportunity, like you say, to include maybe a short survey with one of the letters or with the inspection reports after inspection completed, or even putting up a digital survey on the Engage page to allow people to comment. That is certainly something we can consider.
Any? Councillor Mazan. Oh. Councillor Mazan.
Thank you.
And then Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. And through you, actually more a comment than anything. I was probably reminded in this report that the rollout has included quite a bit of the northeast portion of the township, and it will continue to be so next year, which just happens to be the ward that Gord Allen and I represent. And I think it talks to the fact that when we were attending Lake Association meetings this summer, we heard a lot about this program. In fact, I'd say it was probably one of the things that was talked about the most. And I just think anecdotally, it was really embraced. It was actually quite interesting. It was not not the commentary I think we were anticipating. I think it was actually a lot of enthusiasm around this particular program. And I just think staff, you probably don't hear that very often in this particular role, but the folks that were on island, I'm thinking Skeleton Lake in particular, on island properties. I mean, these folks came out and they're walking around the property and talking to them and educated, and all of that was getting feedback to us through the association meetings. So just thank you. I don't think it's a job that probably gets a thank you very often, but certainly just anecdotally, the community seemed to be quite enthusiastic about it.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, through you. I mostly have a question or concern if there's an ability. So I was just going through files over the last couple of months, and I've pulled up at least 6 different locations where I have got their septics taken care of within our 5-year plan. We like our management company has a 5-year plan for property owners, and I felt, even just for myself, I almost thought if there was an ability for me to submit to the municipality the report that was given from the company that pumped out, if that could be on record, that would be, I think, helpful for the program, as well as, the property owners that are very conscious of what, they do to take care of their systems. But I just thought if there was an ability for our township to retain some of that information, it would be helpful.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, and through you. Yes, there is opportunity for property owners or consultants as yourself to provide that information upon notification of an impending inspection or phase 2 inspection. So I would suggest the best means to address that would be to hold on to that report. And at time of inspection, our consultants will be asking for that information, and it can be captured at that time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. Following up on Councillor Roberts' third-party inspections. It says here 135 property owners responded. There was 86 inspections done. Properties not yet inspected or report, so that's just they didn't get around to inspecting the other 49.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. I can't confirm that the third parties did not attend site. It's my understanding, albeit speculative, that at least one of the third-party inspectors provided the information to property owners rather than directly to the township, and it may have not made its way to the township yet.
Okay, so they probably were inspected. They just haven't. I just want to make sure we were getting everything, all the reports in.
It
Snyder.
It is quite possible that they have been inspected and we have not yet received them. But we do have plans in year 2 to follow up with those properties staff-wise.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Snyder, I have a question. So this is our first year. My recollection is that we categorize septic systems based on age and probability of, getting closer to failure time. So of the ones that we view critical, how many have we done, and how many, how far along this program, and how long will it take us to get through the first critical cycle?
Thank you. The plan, yes, it is broken into 2 different phases. The phase 2 inspections, the critical or high risk systems, are scheduled on a 5-year cycle. So the intention is that we or a third party will attend all of those high risk properties within a 5-year cycle, pending, compliance from property owners.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Edwards.
Are there any of the third-party contractors or somebody that will expose tanks for senior citizens or anything like that?
Mr. Snyder?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to a third party's willingness to expose a tank. I would suggest that there are a number of qualified third parties. I expect that they will. I can't say for certain, but also there definitely are property maintenance companies that may be willing to wish that, or may be willing to provide that service as well to property owners.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no more questions or comments from committee. Thank you very much, Mr. Snyder. And again, congratulations on the first year of success of the program. Yeah, that's great. Next on the item is, I think, Mr. Sharp is giving us a verbal update on the postal strike and its implications for us.
Thank you, Chair Bosomworth, and good morning again, members of committee. Further to the feedback from Planning Committee in November, with one exception, staff have not circulated public notice of planning applications by ordinary mail during the ongoing postal strike. It was felt that posting notice on the township's website together with the posting of a physical notice sign would be too far of a departure from the status quo and would require a concerted effort so far as communication over a greater period of time than the Planning Act timelines would allow. Staff do not intend to depart from the current approach, however, would be happy to discuss and gain input from committee ahead of the holiday break and the January round of meetings. I have no further comments and I stand for questions. Thank you.
Committee, that I guess that I have a question, Mr. Sharp. Would this might mean that we have no applications to review in January?
I'm hesitant to say that there would be no applications. As you saw this round, we were able to circulate the POTTOW application. And the reason we were able to do that is because it was on an island and there were actually no neighboring landowners within the circulation distance that we circulate to. We were also able to return an unfinished business item. So we'll be looking to put together what we can for the January agenda, but we'll just take it as it comes, I would say.
All right. Any other comments or guidance we might have for Mr. Sharp? Mayor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, is there a opportunity to look at this as a reason to start gathering email addresses from every taxpayer and circulating electronically, rather, or is that even allowed if we had access to the information?
Mr. Sharp.
Through you, Chair, I think that's you're not the only one that has mentioned that to me. Unfortunately, the Planning Act would not allow at this point for us to circulate notice by email, but it does allow circulation notice by website. So going forward, that is something that could be considered if that's what Planning Committee and Council wishes. However, as I noted, you know, I would say that to do so would require a great communication effort, more so than we could do in a short amount of time. Thank you.
If I get a supplementary on that, would it exclude us from also doing electronic distribution? Because I know we've had numerous cases where people complain that they don't get the notification until Friday before the Wednesday, and it's probably because they're slow picking up their mail or the mail's slow in delivering. Is there any opportunity as we potentially go down the line of electronic communications with our constituents? Could we do both?
I think posting a notice on our website would certainly assist with that issue. What I would say is together with Ms. Huff and planning staff, we're working very hard to come up with some changes internally that will hopefully help us circulate notice sooner to get those notices out in the mail sooner. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Just an interesting subject. Just a follow up on some of the questions the mayor asked. We shouldn't be afraid of the Planning Act as a township. You know, it's just another document. Is there a way of now for this township approaching and seeing they can get at least start the ball rolling?
Mr. Sharp.
On an electronic solution?
I may defer perhaps to Mr. Pink. I do know that once a year there are meetings, you know, potentially with ministers and so on and so forth, and that may be, you know, one suggestion that could be made at that time. But Mr. Pink may have some considerations. Thank you.
CEO Pink, are we willing to help drag the province into the modern world? Yeah, or are you afraid of the township?
Good morning, committee, and through you. I believe that the recent changes to the Planning Act, which allows circulation or notice of public meetings to be posted solely on the website, would open the door to doing that together with an electronic circulation. I think what Mr. Sharp is alluding to or saying, and I would agree with, is that process to compile an email registry is going to be a large process, not simply just the accumulation of it, but the organization and the gathering of it, as well as communications to our community to advise them that that is now going to be the form. Because if they don't provide their email, and they don't check the website, they will fall in those gaps. So I think it certainly is on our radar. I think it's long overdue. I think we've had this discussion many times over the years, and I'm glad the opportunity now is there. It's just going to take a long time, I think, to get there. But it is a project I think the planning team will certainly be looking at in the future.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sharp.
And further to that, I would just note that through the township's website, I believe you can actually subscribe. So maybe, you know, if we went that route, it would be up to the individual landowner to subscribe and keep their email address updated.
Yeah.
They could subscribe. So when we did upload notices, they'd get a notice that we've done so, and they could check. Thank you.
Excellent point. Any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Burry, then Councillor Kent.
Thank you, and through you, just a comment. You know, the Planning Act for me is kind of like the minimum standard, and certainly the distance for notification that's contemplated by the Planning Act does not contemplate 2, 5, 10, 12, 20 acre properties with, you know, 500 feet of lakefront. And I'd like to see us take a leadership position on going much further in informing our constituents about planning changes than the Act contemplates. You know, when you live in downtown Toronto, the distance is getting a good chunk of people. When you're in Muskoka, we just heard that the POTTOW's application on Wistowe, nobody was in the space, and I just don't think that that's right. And I kind of look at it like the building code. The building code is the bare minimum. If you really want to build a good building, you need to go far beyond it. The Planning Act, again, bare minimum. And why don't we start to take a leadership position?
Thank you for that. Mr. Sharp.
Through you, Chair. I appreciate those comments. I just wanted to advise that we already circulate beyond what the Planning Act requires for a minor variance. The Act requires a 200-foot circulation distance. We circulate to 400. And for zoning bylaw amendments, for example, it requires 400 feet and we circulate to 800 feet. So we've already gone above and beyond that. But certainly, if committee wishes to circulate to even greater distances, that's something that could be considered. Thank you.
Yeah, we need to go like half a kilometer. I mean, certainly on some of the back lots, like there's lots of property. I mean, it just doesn't contemplate, you know, large holdings. But I'll leave that to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Burry. Councillor Burry. Councillor Kent.
Thank you. Just to supplement good conversation, I actually think that because of our seasonal, and I hate to use that word again, the large proportion of people who don't live on their waterfront properties all year long, is almost mandatory that we have the email distribution as something that goes along with the building code requirements or the building requirements that are standard. Just an addition, in addition to what Guy was saying about distance on a lakefront, waterfront property, the distance should be larger. And in addition, the nature of the audience requires, I think, the email distribution. Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Just one other point of clarification. We actually circulate to the mailing address that we have on file for tax purposes. So that's where the notices go, not to an individual's, you know, cottage address. It would be to their physical mailing address. Thank you.
CEO Pink.
Thank you. Just to add to that, while I certainly appreciate the concern with minimal circulation distances, I think what needs to be considered is certainly there are many waterfront properties or many urban proposals that we receive were an 800-foot distance. If we went above and beyond, that would be an extremely large circulation list. So that would make some of our challenges unique in our township. But what I really mainly wanted to point out is that we also have taken so many great strides in our GIS mapping. So appreciate that not everyone is checking, but if through our communication channels, we can continue to push people both to our website where all our notices are posted, whether you're on a circulation list or not, And also now we have several mapping layers that show ongoing and active planning applications, so people can periodically check their area and see planning applications that are in process. So again, if we continue to spread that word, I think that helps somewhat with notice as well. Thank you.
No more questions, comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Sharp. I believe we got the verbal update on this one yesterday, or this is the verbal update from the Director of Development Service Integrated Watershed Management Workshop. But Director Huff, why don't you take another shot at it?
What it's worth, the Freedom of Information Act contemplates floppy disks. Problems being behind.
Thank you, Chair. So again, just providing a very brief update for the committee. The workshop held on November 28th. It was attended by a number of staff and council members from across the watershed, so it wasn't just Muskoka or Muskoka District. There's a number of presentations on a variety of topics related to integrated watershed management, including, some perspectives of how that impacts local municipalities, what they've done to try to mitigate some of those impacts. We've heard about MECP has provided funding for a number of watershed programs in the district with nonprofits and with municipalities. So they did provide an update on those programs as well. I think for many of us who attended, there was a really impactful presentation by a local teenager who was providing her own perspective on what climate change and watershed management means to her and how she believes it's important for communities to take into consideration and protect it for the long run for, her generation as she ages as well as future generations. So that was really nice to see a younger generation involved in the discussions. The meeting also included a component whereby attendees were broken down into groups, and we were asked to do a number of kind of workshop activities. And that was really trying to get the perspective of attendees to understand their ideas and priorities for watershed management, but also to tackle the issue of governance, of what would that actually look like. There was a lot of discussion about, at least in my group, wanting to find a governance model that was slightly different than, say, a conservation authority that you would find in Southern Ontario. And so I think there was a lot of discussions and struggle around what that would look like. So I didn't have the benefit of attending, obviously, previous watershed meetings. And so it was interesting the way that this meeting ended. So the host was put on by Huntsville and Lake of Bays. And so it was essentially, number one, a reach out for another municipality to host a meeting next year, similarly themed, and moving the post along. However, there was also reference to, there was some draft resolutions that were going to be prepared and sent out to municipalities for consideration for potential, again, future movement towards some sort of watershed management governance model. And so what that looks like, I don't know. I think that will be very interesting when we do get those and have that conversation around the table. I think there really seemed to be a common theme that I heard is, yes, of course, it's very important. It's very interesting. People were very engaged, but I think there was a struggle of what's the next step. And so it was, my thought that it didn't appear to be that there was a champion yet, but that's what it really seems to need right now to move it onwards. So happy to end it there and try to answer any questions, but I know a number of members were also attending, and so maybe they would like to offer their comments as well.
Thank you very much. Committee? Councillor Roberts?
Thank you. And I would like to begin by thanking the town of Huntsville and Lake of Bays for hosting this very important subject. I think you answered my question that, because I did have down, well, so, you know, so what? What's the next steps? But it appears that this was very informative, same as the one in May, but we don't have a champion or anyone to take this on, and we're still struggling. So it really, it will be difficult for me to respond to the phone calls I get from, I know two specific leaders in the community. What are we doing? Because it's really causing problems with the, what they're referred to as the mismanagement. And so I look forward to those resolutions you're talking about to see if we can get anything out of there. But I also offer that to his worship, perhaps we should host next year's session. That's just a suggestion. It's out there for one of us to do, and we've got a big watershed and lots of impact. Thank you.
Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, a couple of things. The sad reality is that, and I think Director Huff nailed it. No, there's no leadership here. There's no champion. There's nobody stepping up and whipping this thing into some sort of motion. You mentioned that you hadn't been to earlier ones. Well, you didn't miss anything. This was the same as this one. And this one had a sticky note exercise, which was new, but the rest of it was pretty much the same. And there's 16, I can't remember, 16 or 17 municipalities and 4 First Nations that touch the water, that are part of our watershed. We are not the absolute bottom, but almost the absolute bottom of it. We were the ones who've, you know, in developing our official plan, dealt with density, dealt with setbacks, dealt with vegetation, you know, separately from our official plan, but site alteration. Everybody else is complaining that something needs to be done, but they're not doing anything even to help themselves that I can tell. So I don't think this is going to happen by committee. I think this is going to, somebody's got to take the lead on it. I think it's clear that not anybody wants a conservation authority. I think I heard that 100 times from 100 people. What was, I won't say being proposed, but what we were talking about a bit at this meeting was really the conservation authority theory, but with, stay away from the name. It'll fly. So I don't know how this gets moved forward, but I can be honest with you, repeating what we did just starts to feel like virtue signaling. It seems like the thing to do to make it look like we care. And there's not a whole lot of hard stuff being done at the lower tier municipal level to show the real care. And I'm pleased to say that I think the Township of Muskoka Lakes has done more than everyone else to try to fight for our little segment of it as hard and as aggressively as we can with our official plan. Where the rest of them fall in, I think they're waiting for somebody to do something for them.
Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. And I was, my question was going to be to the mayor, but the mayor did a great job eloquently of answering that. Certainly for me, I wanted to get his perspectives based on what he shared at yesterday's meeting. You know, I am so very concerned, but I'll probably reserve my comments. You know, I do appreciate the mayor. I do believe that the mayor has relationships with Toronto. And that, to my mind, is the only thing that's going to help us here and now with the water levels and the normal operating zone. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the dumping of snow that's happening right now isn't going to be through my window. But anyhow, I was very disappointed. It was great to meet up with others and that type of thing and, you know, enjoy a coffee and such. But I agree with the mayor. I felt there was not a direction and not a need for us to all get together. Interestingly, we have had a lot of concerns over the last couple of weeks about the water levels. You know, hydro or the people that it really control the dams and the effects, they're not at the table. And how we can have these meetings and not have them part of it really concerns me. Because we did hear, as I said, in Bala, we heard that they couldn't move water through because the power was out, you know, for 4 or 5 days. So again, I've been part of all the floods that we've experienced in 30 years. And I go back to 2013, which was very significant in our township. We don't even talk about that anymore. But again, that was a result of somebody not managing the stop logs. And that was presented to us. But that has to stop happening. And that same comment could be made for 2019's flood, is of who manages the water flow. And honestly, the general public doesn't get any say in it at all. And it's just the hydro companies, in my opinion. So if that is going to change, that might be a reason to hold a meeting, but I don't see what we're doing in a moving forward position.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I like this discussion, but I think what I'm hearing from my peers is that they attended the session. We're going to be another year. We might have another similar type of thing. But let's look at ourselves. If we can't count on other people, and Councillor Nishikawa commented that maybe we bring the dam operators into a meeting. And it would have to be a respectful meeting, but just to understand the possibilities. We just check that box off. What are the possibilities that could happen? That may start the ball rolling, and that's what I'm suggesting. And I'd like a committee, if it's allowed, just to expand on that.
Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and then through you, I think you're much closer to the mark than you might realize, and I think it's public knowledge now, right? But yeah, okay. We are commencing an exercise of reviewing the control decisions that are made that affect water levels, specifically in the watershed, but most particularly in the township of Muskoka Lakes. And the operating agreement parties will all have to be a part of any amendment that comes from that. And this is done with, or has been called for by the MNRF, the minister himself, as a result of, I think, repeated badgering or requests from us. It's going to deal only really with, and it's a really big win for us if we can get something out of it and get it done soon. We're going to evaluate the metrics that underlie the decisions that are made to adjust the water control structures. But those water control structures, as you've quite correctly pointed out, belong to, I think it's a dozen or 14 different owners. And they're going to have to be a part of that discussion and decision making. What that doesn't fix, that will help us control the water once it gets in the system, but it's not going to help us control the ability to keep the water out of the system. And I know that sounds ridiculous because a lot of water goes in from snow and other precipitation, but a lot of water flows into it. And if we keep eliminating wetlands, if we keep hardscaping to within an inch of our life, if we keep chopping down trees, if we keep cutting or increasing density, all we're doing with every one of those steps is accelerating the speed with which the water gets into the pond, if you will. And then we have a much bigger problem. The biggest problem we have is we can't let it out. If it comes in all of a sudden in a big storm like today, we can't, depending where we're starting, we can't lower it fast enough to accommodate that without flooding everything downstream. So it has to work. We can't just focus on water levels as how do we adjust water control. How do we open the dam? Do we open the dam when it's like 5 inches from the top and we used to do it and it was 3? Or do we open the dam and leave it open all the time? Or do we run the water levels? Those are the kinds of things we have to go through. But all of that does is deals with water once it's into the waterway, into the system. If we could, like we have tried with our official plan, and if we can get everybody further upstream to understand the importance of reducing hardscape, of maintaining trees and have tree preservation, of maintaining, you know, minimal density or keeping density as low as we can in terms of construction, preserving wetlands, all that stuff. All of those things are water reservoirs. They hold water, keep it out of the system. We don't have to worry about how the dams work if all the water stays on the sideline. So that's the part that's frustrating. And every time we focus exclusively on water levels and the dams and the power, there's a partial solution there, but the longer term solution is much stronger environmental stewardship from the very top of the watershed right through. And that involves 17 municipalities, or 16, I think it is, I can't remember, who have, you know, who we don't know, we don't even know who they all are, let alone how to influence them. Somebody needs to take the lead and make everybody understand how important this is and how vital this is to the health of the watershed, first and foremost. And secondly, to make sure that the water that gets in there can be controlled well enough to be kept away from our, you know, kept in the lake rather than flooding over the sides of it. And that's where the frustration is. I think it's a huge step forward to be invited to participate with MNRF in terms of a review of the underlying decisions, the decisions and the metrics that control how and when the dams are moved. I think the data is now 25 years old. That plan itself is 20 years old, and I think they spent 5 years gathering data to bake into it. In that 25 years, we probably paved half of the wetlands, not paved, but, you know, developed half of the wetlands, chopped 10% of the trees. You've heard me say before, one of the value of a huge tree is it's half of its mass is water. Water that's parked over there, not flowing over your shoes. So everybody's going to understand that it isn't just going to work by building bigger dams or faster dams or building dams that are electronically controlled but don't work when the power is out. None of that's going to help. It's going to have to be that in conjunction with a real commitment to keeping the water from getting in as fast and flowing through the system as quickly as it is now.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Well, here to the mayor. I mean, everything that Mayor Kelly has said, you know, I certainly agree with, and I certainly have firsthand knowledge of it. I can tell you that, you know, we manage the water, 16 times in hydro plants as it leaves Algonquin Park and finds its way to Georgian Bay, the last one being in Bala in a major way. You know, he is absolutely correct. And I do champion him because if he can't help us with the current minister, no one can, and we'll continue to have high water and the results of that. And so, you know, I just can't wait to hear what they come up with. The Watershed Management Plan, which was instituted in 2006, was supposed to be a 10-year plan. It was supposed to be relooked at in 16, and the MNRF rolled it ahead another 10 years. And we were all quite incensed by that, but no problem. So that's you know, you've now got, we're 18 years into a 20-year plan. So the mayor's bang on his words. So thank you for that. And I can tell you right now, the water is going up again. I mean, if you look at the chart today, right here, right now, you know, the water has turned around from going down because of all the snow and starting to go up again. We need somebody with eyes on that thing. And, you know, they would say they have them, but I can tell you all these meetings aren't going to help the high water. The normal operating zone has to come down. Yeah, and you know, I do believe if you guys can't get it done and you know, Graydon Smith goes somewhere else to another portfolio, we are done. Because if he can't help us, I don't believe anyone can, because 13, 16, 19, you know, 21, we had high water. Last spring, we had high water. this, you know, this coming spring, yikes. So I appreciate the help.
Mayor Kelly, and then Councillor Mazin.
I'm rethinking because I've heard from Mayor Alcock, who called me and asked me to host or asked us to host the next meeting, and I was probably a little abrupt. And I'm rethinking that, and I'm wondering if we can do it on our terms instead of on the terms of trying to just huff and puff and make a lot of noise and pretend we're solving something. If maybe getting Kevin Trimble and Peter Sale and Norman Yan and a few of the others in a room in the first couple of weeks of January and saying, we really need to make this work. I don't want to be part of another kumbaya that looks great on press release, and by the time you've driven home from Huntsville, nobody even remembers you were there. We need to shake it up. We need to make it important. We need to get it on everybody's scale. It isn't as important to them that we are getting floods. They have to understand that you know, we have to build it up much more than just water levels. It's the health of the watershed. It's the health of the water and all of the aquatic life and all of the wildlife and all of the, you know, the botany that surrounds it. It's not, if we just make it about water levels and flooding, it's our problem alone, frankly, or not exclusively, but almost. We have to actually make people realize that there's a responsibility that comes with the stewardship of a piece of this watershed, and the responsibility is health and welfare of the entire, I'm making words up, biosphere, and they have a vital role to play. And if the end product of that is there's less water in the system at inconvenient times, because that's the problem, it's the timing. It all comes at once in the spring. But if there's less water in the system to deal with, then we can manage it a lot more effectively than we can if it just gushes and ebbs and tides. I mean, then we're just a victim. We can't be victims.
Councillor Mazin.
Thank you, and through you. There's a lot that just got kind of unraveled there in the last few minutes, and so I can't really follow the mayor other than to say I'm glad that we're finally able to have this kind of a conversation, because it is difficult when it is such a huge impact on a big portion of our community, now on an annual, like yearly basis, monthly basis, and to feel like we're somewhat muted. And so to hear the leadership being, and I will say coming from the township on a lot of different fronts, is really, really, I get to say cautiously optimistic, is how I feel. For the first time probably in a long time, and there's others that have been living this longer than I have. So I'm finding it, you know, as I say, as we close off this year and we're all watching water levels kind of go up and down, and you're right, it's not the only thing. But if we reflect back to the 2019 flood, and there was that MWAG report, that committee that came together, there was 3 recommendations. The first was that integrated watershed management was going to be the governance or the structure or the approach that was going to be taken. And the second, but called the most pressing need, was to address the flooding concerns. And we all know that there was a $1.1 billion hit just in the one flood alone. So this is a real discussion. It's an important discussion. It's one that's going to take time. I don't know if anybody else has seen the size of that operating plan. It's a tome, and the time is now. Conditions have changed. In any good world of business, you would revisit a plan on a prescribed timeline. You'd have appropriate reporting. This, as Councillor Zavitz has said, you know, it got punted a number of years ago. The time is now. Conditions have changed. Climate change is upon us. We're seeing a variety of variables now in the environment. So I have to say I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. If I could go back to the actual integrated watershed management session this time around, like Mayor Kelly, I've been down to a few of these. The content, while similar, I think there was a couple things that I wanted to say were slightly different. The first was that we actually had somebody, or they had somebody from the MNR there, a staff member. And I felt like that was a significant new step. And I think CAO Pink and he have connected. So we've often talked about our need to have somebody from the province at the table. And for me anyways, that was the first time I had kind of seen that. The other thing I think that I saw as Director Huff was suggesting, there was tables. This was different. And yes, we had all of our sticky notes and there was a focus on that discussion. And I'm sure that the others sitting around, I think TML was quite well represented. And I think this is because this has been us leading this charge for so long, because it is such a significant impact in our community. It's moving from the data analysis, or at least this was the theme I was trying to get across, is we can collect all this data. We had the gentleman from the district who is doing all the geo hub and the collecting of the data. And it's very cool, the technical information that we now have at our fingertips. But we can collect all sorts of data. It's what do you do with that data? So you need to have the appropriate analysis in place, which then triggers action. And so certainly as we moved around the tables, that was at least my common theme. And I think I've heard a few others saying that as well. So, I end on grateful that this is still kind of part of our conversation, but maybe a focus for 2025 is just like this kind of, we have to keep pushing it, because if we don't, I don't think, and maybe that's my last comment as to what Mayor Kelly said. If we don't, I think the leadership, like this won't stay on the dance floor. So thank you.
Councillor Roberts, I'll give you one more.
Thank you. It's very quickly. I liked your offer, your worship, getting those gentlemen in a room or ladies, and let's start something. One little piece, one journey starts with one step. So let's do that.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. It's quite a problem, because when you look at our correspondence today, the province is pushing for more housing, which means more roofs, going with lot coverage and everything else. Every time we add 1% on a lot, it does it. We let people pave more sports courts and everything else. We're part of the problem if we are going to actually control it. And that is, we maybe have to start looking at it, and you look at Bracebridge, Cravenhurst, Huntsville, the subdivisions going up there, 200-300 houses. We got 200 houses here. That water's got to go somewhere. And guess what? We cut those fine trees down to do it. So, it's a very large problem. It's not just the watershed, it's what's in there, it's what we're doing to cause it. And we have to look at everything. Thank you.
Okay, committee, I'm going to wrap this up on this one. Thank you very much. Very, very fulsome discussion. What do we have left here? OLT's tribunal status update. Do we have any on that front? Mr. Sharp? Do we have anything on staff delegated approvals? Oh, sorry, the OLT status updates. I don't think there's anything on that. And staff delegated approvals from November 1st to the 30th. Anything on that? No. Correspondence. I think we've all seen that correspondence. Clerk, we done?
You're done.
I need the resolution. All right. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee meeting adjourn at 12:12 and the next regular Planning Committee meeting be held on Friday, January the 17th at 9 a.m. via an electronically and in-person hybrid format in the beautiful downtown of Port Carling in our Chamber Council municipal offices. Any discussion? All those in favor? Approved. Thank you very much.